Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast.
Let's talk about beer, Johnny. Let's talk about AVB. Let's talk about Imperial Stouts and Imbibe buyouts of wicked weed. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about beer.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Bubble Podcast.
Is it episode 4?
Johnny's smirking at me here.
We got called out for saying that the last episode was episode 2 because we didn't count the intro. But that's just Beer Geeks for you. So we took an extended break over December. Well, we didn't take a break. Everyone else was just too busy to record with us.
I wonder why.
I don't know. Something about Christmas. But we are back in January, and we're back in January with a dry January-inspired episode. A fascinating chat with Robyn, one of the founders of Square Root Soda.
Yeah, so for those who don't know about Square Root Soda, they are a soda company based in East London, very near where 5 Points began, actually. Mm-hmm. And they've been going for about
5-6 years?
Yeah.
They think their first bottle came out in 2014.
She wasn't sure, so neither are we.
She doesn't know. You guys don't need to. But the reason we wanted to talk about sodas wasn't actually because of dry January, although we timed that very well. It was more because we saw so many synergies with the craft beer industry and the food industry, who all have similar challenges, similar situations, similar processes. But what we learned is that it's kind of like in 1,000 different ways it's different, but they're all tiny little ways, which Robyn was enlightening us to.
Yeah, and also the way that you walk into the craft beer bars that we so often drink in, and they always have a soda alternative to Coke. Quite often they'll have Coke in the fridge, but they'll usually have a Square Root or one of the many other brands, some of which aren't officially craft, I suppose we could say after.
No, not a craft soda. So yeah, there's lots of terminology: craft soda, small batch soda. Soda jerk.
Soda scene was my favourite.
Soda scene. But it's more like soda wars, as you'll learn. So it's a really interesting chat, but we start by going through the process of how it's made, because from that, all the other issues and we shouldn't just say issues, like all the positives of the amazing soda scene sort of stem from the way that it's made and how quickly it's made. So yeah, this is Robyn, founder of Square Root Soda, and we'll see you in about 40 minutes.
Take it away.
I love that stuff. Been drinking it for years. Drinking it for years. Drinking it for years. Drinking it for years. You know, I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it. Hops to it. You know, I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it. Hops to it.
Right. How often are the trains going to go over?
Every 3 to 4 minutes.
Oh, good.
I'll put a bomb scare in.
Usually my dog is here and he will bark. So instead of a barking dog, this week we have a train. We like to have an interruption throughout the podcast.
Exactly.
Because
it's time to think.
Yeah.
So Robyn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking your Friday afternoon off to spin a yarn with us.
Yeah, what else are Friday afternoons for?
I don't know. Spinning yarns, that's not
Doesn't
not really
like the type of conversation we're going to have.
No, I don't think so. And I've never said that phrase before. So,
you're not a grandmother.
You're the founder, one of the founders of Square Root.
I am.
Square Root Sodas. We just had an amazing tour because I had no idea how soda was made.
Yeah, neither did I at
Which,
all.
yeah, slightly blew my mind. So maybe we should start there and just explain to people how it's similar to beer in some ways and how it's completely different in many others.
Sure. So the thing that, well, our thing is basically we start with the fruit first. So we always want to find an interesting ingredient or something that comes from somewhere that's really good. I guess the easiest one to talk you through is lemonade. So our lemons come from Sicily.
We actually got a smell of them
Did
earlier
you?
on. They're amazing, yeah.
Very lucky.
Scratch the surface and you get
Yeah.
the really tart smell off them.
So they come from a small family farm that Ed, who is the other founder of Square Root, found on the internet. It's a magical place. And the thing that's good about them is they're completely untreated. So you can just scratch the skin and you get all the gorgeous oils coming out. And we want to use the rind, so any chemicals or any sprays like that, they're not really good for what we're doing. So the first journey part of the lemon is we'll rind it, which currently involves a grater and a power drill. I'm sad you didn't get to see that part.
That's craft. That's craft soda.
But it speeds it up a lot. We soak the lemon rind in a sugar syrup to try and extract all that flavour out. And while that's happening, then we juice the lemons.
Can you talk us through actually how the drill works?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever seen one of those hand tools that you can put an apple on. You spike the apple onto
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Like
and
a
you turn the
spiralizer.
crank. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it peels the skin off. So it's one of those that we've cut into two pieces. One of them is the spike, which is the bit that we put into the drill. And then we spike the lemon, and then the peeler, which is the grating part, stays intact, and then you just point the power drill in the direction of the peeler.
Yeah.
And
And you
run
do
the
that.
drill.
You do that how many times per batch?
So, I mean, how many lemons are in a box? That's a very good question.
The philosophical question, even.
Yeah. So there's probably about 50 to 80 lemons in a box, and a batch uses 20, maybe 25 boxes.
Lots. We're talking
We're
lots.
talking lots, yeah. The team have gotten very good to it. I think there's a competition running amongst ourselves as who can rind the fastest, and I can tell you it's definitely not me.
How long did it take to get to that stage with the drill? Was that hand done for a while? And then
Yeah,
you-
so to start with, we were just using a grater, and that was terrible. And then we just bought one of those machines. Ed and I happen to have one in our kitchen. We've got so many random weird bits of stuff that we never really use to do anything with. But I must have found some apples somewhere or something and was playing with it and suddenly thought, oh, I could spike a lemon on this and that would take the skin off much easier. And so we were doing the hand crank turning. And then it was almost certainly Ed's idea to saw the metal bit of the spike off and put it in a drill and try and speed that up. But it's just one of those things that came out of many, many days of slowly peeling rind off lemons.
I like
and
it.
thinking about how can you make that faster.
Yeah.
using your initiative, what you've got around you.
So from that point, it's juiced. We saw the juicer. It's like the kind of stuff you'd see at a food stall. It's not big.
Yeah, it's a cafe-style orange juicer. Yeah.
And so 20 boxes of lemons have to go through that.
Yep.
And then what?
So we collect the juice. The sugar syrup is poached with the lemon rind in it, and we leave that to cool, and then we sieve that out. The rind's discarded, or the pulp is discarded. Actually, it's turned into compost, so it doesn't just go in the bin. And that's basically it, because lemonade it's just lemons, sugar, and water. There shouldn't really be anything else in it, in my opinion. And if you're using really nice lemons, you don't need to put anything else in it to make it taste nice.
So the key is the lemon.
Yeah,
The key is the saucing.
exactly.
So what can you tell us about your lemon? And how secret is it?
Well, a lot of people use Sicilian lemons in their lemonade. I guess what we have that other people don't is that we make it fresh ourselves. We don't buy a concentrated juices made elsewhere. We're doing it all fresh. They leave Italy on day 1. They arrive with us by day 5. Usually by day 7, they're in a bottle.
Amazing. Such a quick turnaround. Sort of we're used to the beer world when even to churn out a pale ale quickly is going to take a couple of weeks. And you can do it in 3 days, less.
Yeah. So we don't actually have a lot of space where we are. So for us, it's about ordering the fruit to arrive exactly when we need to use it so that we get the freshness, and we're capturing that freshness in the bottle, but also so that we don't have to store anything. Because, London, everyone knows, there's nowhere to put anything.
Whether you're at home or a business, there's no storage.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're in the midst of January. Is that a big time for you guys?
Yeah, January it's often as busy as we would be in like July and August when it's gloriously hot. I mean, it was this year. So as soon as we come back, we almost can't not be in on the 2nd of January because we've got an email list full of like 100 orders, people being like, oh, I've run out already, it's January 2nd, I have to stock up. We definitely see a huge uplift this month.
And are lemons as a fruit seasonal? Is that not a huge headache for you?
So they are seasonal, but lemons actually have 3 seasons, so you can buy them all year round. It's just the lemons that you see in a supermarket, they're often picked now. This is actually yellow lemon season. The lemons you get from Europe now, they're called feminellos. But they fruit on the tree all year round. It's just for the rest of the time they're green. So because we've been taught by supermarkets and by big businesses that lemons are yellow, they're this size, they're this shape, that's what you think of as a lemon. But if you just turn up and see us in the summer, you see a crate full of what everyone assumes is limes, but is definitely not.
Giant limes.
Does that affect the colour of the lemonade?
No, not at all. The juice is still exactly the same inside. It's just green
It's
on
just
the outside.
because of you use a lot of the rind and stuff. I was wondering if the colouring of that would make it slightly.
No, it doesn't really affect it.
You'd be like, this is a summer square root. I can tell by the.
Well, there is
the
a made on
green
date on every bottle, so you should be able to tell when we made it.
And it's all about freshness with all your products, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why so many of our products are seasonal, and you can only buy them at certain points during the year. Because we don't want frozen fruit, or we don't want tasteless stuff that's been imported from like really far away that spent like 6 weeks on a ship getting to us.
Yeah. So how did it all come about? It seems that in the last sort of 6 or 7 years in London or in the UK, it's been all about craft beer, and both you and Ed come from a beer background. But so
you saw it really taking off and went, actually, we're going to do something else.
Well, we definitely felt like we wanted to start doing something. We spent a lot of time in East London, and there were so many different businesses going on. We were both involved in beer, but we had friends that were running bakeries, and we had friends who were making chocolate, and friends who were making all different kinds of things. And we sort of started to notice that no one was really doing soft drinks yet. And for me, with what I would play around with cooking at home or making stuff at home, playing around with different kinds of fruit and how fruits work together is kind of what interested me. So that's sort of how we got into making those kinds of drinks rather than beers.
So it's kind of a chefy approach to fruits, like flavour combinations and stuff, which you couldn't necessarily do with beer unless you were making fruit sours, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have to think, like 7 years ago, no one was really drinking sours. So it wasn't like the forefront of people's minds to do stuff like that.
And why do you think people weren't really doing soft drinks? Like, particularly this time of year, everyone's like, well, what we need to make sure that people still come to the pub is to have a great soft drinks range. Still very few pubs do. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I guess at the time it just wasn't on people's minds. People hadn't really thought that a soft drink could be what we now make it as now and what other people are making it. I guess it almost took the beer thing happening for people to realise that craft drinks can have modern flavours, and then everything else follows behind the thing that was first.
So you feel it sort of led the way for people like you and other things in the drinks industry to blossom, I suppose, and expand and think outside the box?
Yeah, definitely. In the time that Ed and I were looking at starting our own business, I think we saw about 20 different people opening a brewery. And when you see so many people doing it, you kind of get it into your mind that it's not difficult. So I guess that happening and seeing people make it themselves was probably really fundamental to why we started Square Root and why, unlike most other soft drinks companies, we make everything.
Yeah, so I got 2 questions following on from that. The first one is, what's the scene sort of like? Are there lots of people who maybe have ambitions or marketing campaigns around the idea of being craft, of being small batch, of making it themselves, but aren't necessarily? Is that an issue in the industry?
Yeah, massively. There are lots of brands out there. I would say there are very few people who are actually doing things in the way that we are doing things, but they're almost trading off of how we talk about our drinks and what we promote. But the most common thing to do if you want to start a soft drinks company is to contact a third-party manufacturer and say, I want a lemonade, formulate me a lemonade.
Yeah, so it's sort of own brand.
Yeah.
You might help them choose how sour you want it to be, or...
Yeah, exactly. It's very brand forward. So people start with an idea of what they want to do.
Yeah, the labels, how it looks,
Yeah.
sort of the message they want to perceive, and then someone else does the legwork.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a little bit like some contract breweries would perhaps go to a brewery that will make it and go, well, we want to make this. What's possible? Without actually, doing the legwork and the craft angle. I did the air quotes thing. Keep forgetting it's a podcast, not a YouTube channel. But equally, I guess by making it yourself, you have the freshness angle, which they'll never be able to replicate.
Yeah, exactly. You look at the backs of the labels. The front might look glorious, but the back, I read the ingredients list and you see lemon juice from concentrate and then some essential oils that they've had to add in to try and replicate what we get from a fresh lemon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on a more positive note, is there, the craft beer scene is something that people talk about and eulogize over and love. We're here in the experiment where two breweries have come together and put their beers and run different events and everyone comes down. Is there anything like that in the soda world? Is there a soda scene, social scene?
I like the thought of a soda scene.
A soda scene, yeah. Just people high on sugar.
So much nicer than the craft beer scene.
It probably would be, yeah.
There are some other companies out there that are really friendly and we'll sort of meet up with them and talk about how stuff is going. But I think the thing that is different from beer to soft drinks is a pub will perhaps have space for 10 different beers on tap, but they'll just have one soft drink in the fridge. So it feels a bit more competitive. So everyone's always got that weariness because they're worried. They say like, oh yeah, we're in talks with this person, that you'll like swoop in and take that.
Yeah.
I think the coffee industry is actually quite like that as well,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because you only really have one coffee supplier in your pub or in your cafe.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, hands off. It's mine. You're on my turf. Whereas, the beer scene, I suppose, you've got so many different lines to play with in a lot of pubs and you can sort of coexist.
Yeah, and collaboration is really, really common. So people like to come together, and it's very much got the angle of learning from what each of you do and then taking that away and applying it to your own process. But it feels more open. I mean, we do a lot of collaborations with breweries. I've never done a collaboration with a soda company.
So you've tapped into that because it's an open world and because you've come from that world, and you hope that your customers will as well if they love craft beer and they want to have a soft drink.
Yeah, and in the same way, we also both have a lot to learn from each other. So a lot of breweries will be interested in how we process fruits and how we can engineer things together, like the drill lemon peeler, so that we can quickly process something, and that might be something they can apply if they want to make a fruit beer, but they don't necessarily want to buy ready-made zest or whatever. And how we look at putting a drink together is interesting for them because ultimately a beer is made in the same way every time. You're just changing the ingredients. So it's interesting to see how a completely different type of drink is made for them. And then for us, it's just really interesting to see how breweries have expanded and what they're using to make their lives easier in terms of like packaging and stuff like that. So it's quite beneficial to both of us.
Yeah, I mean, when we did the tour, so you've bought a tank off of Pressure Drop when they moved.
I think we've got 4 of Pressure Drop's tanks in our space.
And then your bottling line was once, not your bottling line, the make of it, you said was now a disused ornament in Cantillon.
Yeah, our original bottling line, we actually bought that from 5 Points Brewery.
Right, okay. And the guys that you've done collabs with, who are they and what have you made with them?
So we do a lot of collaborations with Pressure Drop, of course. That definitely just came about because their original brewery where we are now, it's just a minute down the road from where Ed used to work at the Coca Tavern. So Ed would be downstairs brewing. Pressure Drop, they like to knock off early. We all know that about them. They would then be sitting at the bar when Ed would come up from shift, and we just got talking. And so they're really good friends of ours. So it was great when we finally set up Square Root to do some work with them. We also collaborate with 5 Points. Our most recent collaboration we did with Partisan Brewery. That was a really great one to do. Ed and Andy, the founder of Partisan, they used to work together at Redemption, so old friends again.
And what did you make with those guys?
So Partisan have been making a series of Negroni-style beers. They've done a white Negroni, a Negroni, and then the one that we made with them was Spagliato, which is a Negroni where you remove the gin and you mix it with Prosecco instead. So it's Campari, Vermouth, and Prosecco.
Yep.
And it's alcohol-free completely?
No, so the beer has alcohol. The interesting thing that we can then do is we take the beer and we blend that down into a shandy to make the non-alcoholic version of that collaboration. So you get 2 products, the beer and the shandy. So we just vibe off the beer. So whatever's in that, we'll use again and then just soda-ify it instead of brewing it.
Amazing.
Slightly tough question. So you guys have seen lots of growth and you're about to expand, which we'll have a chat about in a sec. We're in the midst of what is supposed to be the most successful dry January ever. There's going to be, I think it's 4.2 million people giving up alcohol.
We are only 5 days in.
Yeah, well, we'll see how many of those 4.2 go the distance. How much of your growth, but more broadly Soda's growth, do you think has come from people giving up alcohol, and how much of it has come from people just loving flavour and coming at it from the way that you did, a sort of chefy interest in fruit and drinking?
That is a tough question. I think it all sort of is playing together. So I think as people expect better quality stuff in places, they then expect that to translate through everything. So the wine list, the beer list, the food, the soft drinks. But then I also think that all the press and the promotion that not drinking is getting is also making it more acceptable to go to a pub and not necessarily have an alcoholic drink. But then those kinds of people who are going to the types of pubs that stock our drinks, they want something that is the equivalent of what they would be drinking if it was a beer.
Yep.
And obviously we're the answer to that.
So is there a snootiness about Coca-Cola in the soda world, the soda scene?
I think it either goes one of 2 ways. You're either like, no, I hate Coke, I'd never drink it, or you're like totally fanatical about it and you're like, Coke is my everything, it's my childhood, it's like the thing I have always drunk, so I always will have it.
When I see it in a glass bottle, I'm always like, yeah, I'm going to have it.
Yeah, I don't know why, but glass bottle is the ultimate Coke.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably zero science behind that. But I love it as well. I don't quite know what it is. And what about from a more industrious perspective? So obviously brewers, gin makers, all these people are railing against macro beer, macro gin, this kind of stuff. Is there any friction between the bigger producers and the small artisan guys coming up?
I think the bigger producers haven't really started to take that much notice yet.
Right,
because,
it's too young.
Yeah, it's still in its infancy. I certainly think it's going to be more of what they're looking at now, but we haven't really seen a lot of like aggressive sales moves that you get from people like Carlsberg who like buy up lines in pubs. It's not really the done thing for Coca-Cola.
Is there a craft soda scene in America?
There is. We've been talking to a lot of American brewers, and they say that they import UK drinks because the drinks that they can buy in America, they don't rate them. They think they have like preservatives and stuff in, because there's a lot more strange stuff that's legal to use in drinks in America than there are here. So
it's just because obviously the UK brewing scene has looked to America so much. Sort of the birth of craft beer, I suppose, has come from there, and we look over for inspiration, and they kind of lead the way. And the UK has come such a long way in such a short space of time, but there is such an influence, and all the big buyouts happened there first. And so I was wondering if there was things like that happening over there that we could maybe look to see what will happen in the UK soda scene in the next sort of 3 to 5 years.
I think it's quite regionalized. So we've met a few people that are doing slightly similar things, but there's no one really doing it in the way that we are. There'll be like a small place that does kegs for certain bars and stuff like that. There isn't anyone really, that I found that is approaching it in the same way that we are.
So you're the origin of it, and people are going to probably, in America, maybe they'll be looking to the UK for advice when their soda scene kicks off, maybe?
That would be interesting. I think we're like the progression of what was already happening.
So what was happening when you started?
What year did you start, sorry?
So the first bottles were released in 2014. Yes, that's right. Is that right? These are the kind of details that I really should know by now.
we can put it in the show notes if it's wrong, but for now we'll go with 2014.
We'll go with 14. I don't know what year it is right now. So where am I?
So were there people producing small batch sodas that you tasted when you were doing it in your kitchen?
So, there's one place in Bristol that was doing an open source version of Cola called Cube Cola, and there was somebody else in East London called Dalston Cola who were at the time doing it themselves. But apart from that, at the time, there wasn't really anybody.
Right. And what? This is just a personal question, really. What is it about Coca-Cola? So lots of people have done colas.
Yeah.
Firstly, what is a cola? And secondly, why does it taste so radically different from what we know as a cola?
What is a cola is also a very difficult question. The easiest answer, it's like a botanical drink that is made from a mixture of citrusy spices and spicy spices, with caramel, which makes it the dark colour that you know as Coca-Cola or as Cola.
So is that like a caramelised sugar syrup rather than like a white sugar syrup, or?
So yeah, we use burnt sugar, but Coca-Cola uses like caramel colour.
Right. Yep. I've seen that in the ingredients list. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So it is a subtle blend of all these different spices that just taste like cola.
Right.
Do you know the origin of it?
So Coca-Cola is the origin of it, I think. The story goes that there was a man in America who ran a pharmacy, and back in those days, the pharmacy is where you would have a soda bar, and you would have, I kid you not, this is a real job title, a soda jerk who works behind the bar, who mixes up the sodas for you. So they would be like syrups on a back bar, and then he would measure them out and mix them with fizzy water, and that's what you'd be served. And I think Mr. Coca-Cola, whoever his actual real name was just playing around with flavors and found these things called cola nuts, which I'm not really sure how they made it into the final drink, because personally I think they taste horrible. They are incredibly astringent. But it was like a mixture of cola nuts and the sugars, and he was just playing around with spices until he hit on a drink that people enjoyed. I can't imagine how many different iterations of that drink.
How many times his mates had to be like, dude, I love you, but that's rancid.
And then he became the wealthiest soda jerk ever to live.
Yeah.
Have you ever been called a beer jerk, Johnny?
Yeah, I feel like I probably definitely behind my back.
Well, so everyone at Square Root is a soda jerk. That's what it says on my jumper.
Oh yeah, soda jerk.
Oh, I think it's got a yeast infection. Yeast infection.
So what got you really interested in it was the way that different fruits play off each other, and messing around in your kitchen. Nowadays, how do you do product development? Is it like Mr. Coca-Cola, just jerking around?
Yeah, we're just jerking around. So we still have a little test kitchen at Square Root, and basically, yeah, that's how everything is done. We'll just play around. Similar types of fruit will work in the same way. So like an apple and a pear are kind of the same when you're trying to work out how much fruit juice you'll need to make it taste of that thing. Like a lemon and a lime are kind of the same. A strawberry and a blackberry would be kind of the same. So we would always take a previous recipe and start from there and then just change the fruit in it and see how that works. And then just by tweaking little bits, like how much sugar, how much lemon juice, how much of the fruit juice, are we pressing it in the right way? Is there something else we can do to get flavor out? And it's just playing around with all those different things until you get to the final drink.
And is it always fruit? Or can you play around with sort of spices or
Yeah,
herbs
we use a lot
and
of
things like
herbs
that?
and spices and stuff in the drinks as well, yeah.
Root beer.
Root beer.
So I'd never really understood or cared what root beer was until I was in Texas middle of last year, and I went and I had a Reuben sandwich in a Jewish deli with a root beer, and the root beer was the most delicious fucking thing I have ever tasted.
Tastes like fizzy Benelin.
Tastes like fizzy Benelin.
No, but, well, I mean, that has its appeal as well. But it was just, I don't know, like licorice and toffee and all this delicious stuff. You guys have a root beer?
We do have a root beer, yeah.
What is it?
Other than my least favourite, I'm sorry. It is, so ours is kind of a combination of an old East End sarsaparilla and an American-style root beer. So we use sarsaparilla, which is a root. We also use burdock root, so it's kind of like a dandelion and burdock sort of flavour.
Mm-hmm.
And we use licorice because you get like a really nice sweetness out of that. And then the American-style root beers, they always have wintergreen in them. And wintergreen is what's that really medicinal flavour that you get from a root beer.
So that's what Rob gets when he tastes it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the reason it was never really that popular in this country is because wintergreen we use in medicine, whereas in America they don't do that.
Right, so it's an association that we
Yeah.
have. All right. Because the one I had was made at the place. I forget what it was called. It was in San Antonio. It had none of that medicinal kind of thing to it. But it's like you say, soda is really regional. And it's
Yeah.
not something I've really thought about that, maybe in Texas they don't add wood green, but in the UK they do. And it's something you don't really think about. You think a Coke's a Coke, a lemon's a lemon, a lemonade's a lemonade. And it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
Clearly I need to become a root beer importer because I'm getting overexcited about it.
Before you explained it, my next question was going to be, because I think Johnny was turning it into quiz you on what different soft drinks actually are, what a sarsaparilla was or is.
So it's a kind of root beer. I guess a root beer, the easiest way to quantify it, like a pale ale or like a porter, is it's a drink made out of plant roots.
Right. That was easier than cola then.
Yeah.
So we talked a bit about the big guys. What are the ambitions for Square Root? If you're always going to make it yourself,
Yeah.
how far can you take that, and how much can you compete with people who are contract brewing it?
So for me, that's the interesting part. Ambitions-wise, I would love to see it everywhere. One of my favourite things about going to Berlin is you can walk in any shop, you can walk in any bar, and you see Fritz Cola, and it's just ubiquitous everywhere. You can't walk past an umbrella in a patio without seeing their brand. There's two guys' smiling faces just staring down at you. I would love that to be us here.
Is that legit made and...
I think they make it on contract now.
Right, okay.
Was
But
it
they
originally?
no. They originally stored it in their garage.
Hey, well, that's cool too.
So craft.
They also have a giant ship in the river that runs through Berlin, and it's like Fritz Cola branded. You can see it on their website.
Like Brewdog have a plane now.
Exactly. Maybe there'll be a soda plane one day.
Yeah. Square Root plane. Be a little Cessna or something.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that makes doing this really interesting for me is the fact that we make it. I think I was telling someone earlier, I didn't get into this because I wanted to become a salesperson. I got into this because I wanted to make drinks. So I always want to make it. I always want to keep the whole production process in-house. Not only because it makes our drinks great, but we get to do really creative things like collaborating with other people. I think that's a really good part of what we do. So the interesting thing is going to be about growing this and keeping it like in that way and keeping the production in-house.
And is there any fear that the people who are doing it, who are contract making it, will sort of fill that void for artisan, air quotes, sodas while you're doing it the right way and organically and growing a bit slower?
That doesn't really worry me. I think doing it this way and building up our network of fans and customers and doing it the right way, I think ultimately that will win.
Yeah,
I think,
organic growth.
Yeah. And
just like your lemons.
Exactly. We'll have the longevity in the end. Yeah.
So another thing that's been sort of big news in the last year is the sugar tax in the soda world. Has that affected you, or will it affect you?
So it doesn't affect us yet. Like beer duty, there's a minimum threshold which we haven't met, but eventually we will meet it. And our drinks do fall into the lower band, so it will be the lower level of tax. Because we're using fresh ingredients, the sugar isn't that high, but not all of our products are low enough sugar to not be affected.
And so in beer, the tax is a very significant amount of the cost that the consumer pays. Is that also true now in soft drinks?
I don't really know, because we haven't really seen much of a price increase on the bigger companies who will be affected the most by this. I think the only thing I really notice is if you get a meal deal in Sainsbury's now, the bottle of Coke you get with it is 30% smaller.
Yeah, I've seen. I think they've made either the packaging smaller, which Coke definitely did, and then Brad was raging about the fact that Fanta's now sugar-free.
Oh, and
completely.
Dr. Pepper is now 50-50, and it's ruined everything for me.
Is there nothing the government can't take the joy out of?
What is Dr. Pepper?
Oh my God.
I love it so much. Again.
So I really struggled to figure out what Dr. Pepper was. And because before I did all this, I did a chemistry degree. I got a lab to analyze what was in Dr. Pepper.
Love that.
Amazing.
And try and help me to understand what it is. And it's kind of like cola, but it has like lots of vanilla and lots of almondine flavors in it. But
Almondine is in literally like almond.
yeah,
Right.
like almond extract, but I don't know if they get it from almond. You can get it from things like apricot kernels and stuff, so it doesn't make people's allergies
Of course, yeah. So it's not a nut.
come out.
Nut issue, yeah.
Exactly.
There's a shop in Leytonstone near my house, and it sells the American Dr. Pepper and the American cherry Dr. Pepper. And it does taste different, and it's nicer.
It's regionalised, mate.
Oh
So
my
good.
God.
Yeah,
I
you've
didn't
been
know
listening.
that American was different. I'm going to America in March, so I'm going to
You'd
fill
send
my
that-
suitcase.
Yeah. It's like when we go away to America and fill our suitcase full of
Other half.
Other half. And stuff.
Yours is all
Look at
Dr.
mine, I've got Dr. Pepper
So
cherry.
we're going to go see Other Half, and I'm just going to be like, no, I'm really sorry. My suitcase is full already. Just with Dr. Pepper.
When you were sat there and you knew that the sugar tax was coming,
Yes.
were you pro or were you against the notion as a producer of it?
I think I was largely indifferent.
Right, okay. Because it wasn't going to affect you for a long time, or because you were balancing your business head and the obesity crisis?
So we didn't really know if it was going to affect us or not. We were part of the consultation process, so
Right.
the government came and talked to us about what we think. And it wasn't until literally, I think, a week before the April deadline it was supposed to come out that we knew whether we had to register for a thing, what the threshold was going to be, if there was going to be a tax relief. It was very disorganized. But I always feel in these kind of situations, until you know what's going to happen, there's no point
You can't worry
thinking about it or doing anything about
Yeah.
it.
I
And
think that's what we spent our time doing at Cave Direct, is sort of trying to figure out what's going on with Brexit. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, we don't know. and
Yeah,
there's
it's hard to
nothing
be
that we
scared
can
of
do.
something you don't know what it is yet. Like,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that is a sort of, your approach is probably the best way to do it. Like, it's out of your
Yeah.
hands and there's nothing you can do, and all you can do is really react to when it comes into place and if it affects you.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the media does a really great job in like making you feel really panicked about everything, and then when it happens, it's just like, did it happen?
Yeah, I feel like there was huge press around the campaign by Jamie Oliver and a couple of other people.
Yeah.
And then when it actually came to effect, I don't remember a single story about going, it's in effect now, look what's happened. Because I feel like the journalists went out there and said, what are you going to do to change it? And everyone went, not much. Like Coke made their cans a bit smaller, that was it.
Yeah, and it's because a lot of people reformulated so they didn't have to pay the tax.
Yeah.
So the amount of money the government thought they were going to get in is nowhere near what they actually got in. So,
which in some way, so long as what they put in that recipe was also healthy, hopefully not aspartame or whatever, then it did its job.
Sweeteners.
What the flavours they give, or
just in general,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
It's I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but from a very young age, I was scared off aspartame by everyone I knew. It was like, the whole E-numbers thing, like where parents would be sad, they go, that kid's had too much E-numbers. You're like, what does it even mean? An E-number means like European stamped as fine. How are we...
Yeah, everything has an E-number.
Yeah.
Salt has an E-number.
Exactly, yeah. So as a kid, obviously I didn't question them on that. I didn't have any idea. But nowadays, there seems to be a whole scare story about E-numbers, but equally zero questions about the people that suddenly must be putting them in because sugar's got to come out.
But sugar also has an E-number.
So other E-numbers then, yeah.
One thing I'm always interested when I see your bottles is why you've chosen bottles, because quite a lot of people have moved into cans, specifically the 200ml cans.
The Karma Cola.
I think they're 250s.
250ml. Is bottling something you will always do, or is there a reason behind it?
I think until when we started it, obviously canned beer wasn't even really a thing. I think you got like a bit of Sierra Nevada's Torpedo over here in cans, but I don't really remember seeing anything else. And bottling, just because that's what we saw people doing, we assumed that was easy. And I mean, it is easy. It's a lot easier to find bottling equipment that isn't very expensive. So if you're starting a business with not a lot of money, I think it's basically your only option if you want to do it yourself. I mean, the bottles are great. They're fully recyclable, and that's like the major thing on our list of things to... I don't know where I'm going with this now.
You've got little red
good.
lines for you.
Yeah. Cans are also recyclable, but we couldn't really have predicted that they would become such a thing in beer.
Yeah. Is there a benefit, do you think, of having it in a can? So in beer, obviously, there's less light damage, there's less oxidization.
Yeah.
Is the same with soda?
Yeah, definitely. Light damage definitely affects things when you're using natural flavors. It's the same with beer.
It's the same essential oils. There's the same flavor profiles from the same chemical bonds. Yeah.
Exactly, but we tackle that by putting a shorter shelf life on the drinks, so they're not hanging around in fridges as long. Cans is definitely something that we want to look at. I think that would be a really exciting way to do it. But then the kind of like premium edge of like what a craft soft drink is, it's kind of taken away by cans, because at the moment canned soft drinks you get like Lilt, Sprite.
Yeah.
Also,
like we said about Coca-Cola,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You love it in a glass bottle for some reason. Yeah.
Nothing better than putting a disposable or reusable straw into a glass bottle of Coke.
And sat on a patio in France or something.
Yeah.
Just
Like that
screams
is
holiday.
the best way to drink that. So
A paper straw though,
It's
never
also-
plastic.
Of
never
course, yeah.
plastic.
Come on, Rob. She just said recycling is good, but there's something better, which is you don't have to create any packaging.
Yeah, I'm just going to start serving our drinks in my hand.
Yeah, you can't do the... Actually, no, you could do the new refillable thing that the shops are doing, but just have to be really quick.
the glass bottle to me is the ultimate way to drink a soda. So it is
Yeah.
interesting because the beer industry has moved so far towards cans, whereas it is still to me the best way for you to drink a popsicle.
I also think that, when I drink a square root lemonade, which I do quite a lot now,
Good.
yeah, you're welcome, is it slips down so fast and it's so quenching, and I usually have it when I'm really thirsty, and there's a joy to a bottle, like necking a can for me, it's quite an uncomfortable drinking experience, whereas drinking straight from a bottle is really satisfying. It's completely unquantifiable, and it's based on nothing. But if I was drinking an IPA, love it from a can, but a lager, somehow I prefer drinking it from a bottle, and I think it's because of the speed at which you imbibe.
So you like to neck a lager?
Yeah, I love to neck a lager. Rob's looking at me like that's a weird thing, but everybody loves to neck a lager or a lemonade or a Negroni soda.
I drove over to the Sonic Drive-In, ordered a jalapeno burger, washed it down with beers, beer, I said, Stone Cold, why have one when you can have them both?
So yeah, that was Robyn. Really interesting talk about the soda world, and the soda scene.
I hope you guys enjoyed the What's in This Soda episode.
I mean, that was one of the most interesting parts. I don't want to say that because I probably could have just looked it up on Wikipedia, but not really understanding all the drinks that I just sort of take for granted and what goes into them, particularly root beer.
Yeah, dude, I need to import root beer.
Yeah.
Just that one.
But I actually think what really struck me about this chat was the sort of not quite turf wars, but you know what I mean, that go on in the soda industry. The beer world really does coexist. Everyone has space on a bar. You can have 15 lines in a pub, and you can have 15 different breweries pouring from that. And you could go in the next week, and there could be 15 different breweries pouring from that, and you've got a selection in a fridge of 20, 40, 100 bottles of beer and cans of beer. Whereas that can't happen in the soda world. It is you own your space in the fridge, and
yeah, it's still the second thought, isn't it? The soda. It's like, oh well, we need something for people that aren't drinking, and you only think you need one.
Yeah.
I had an interesting discussion with Nirvana Brew Co, who are the alcohol-free brewery in Leytonstone. Yep. And they were saying that so many of the accounts that they go into to try and sell to say that they don't want to talk to Nirvana because their alcohol-free stuff doesn't sell very well. And so Nirvana's sort of go, well, do you think it's because your product's a bit crap? And people just don't compute sort of profitability and opportunity with the non-alcoholic sector. So you have one non-alcoholic beverage, you have one soft drink, craft soft drink, and that's it.
Ticks a box and then you're done with it.
Exactly. Nobody's putting effort into growing that segment, which must be really tough. And I think Square Root have done a fantastic job because lots of the great bars that I go into, Square Root is the soft drink that's there. And that can't be easy.
Yeah, and that goes down to the quality. You know, all Robyn talked about was the fact that they make it themselves. It's all organic. Everything that goes into it is their hard work. And that sort of shows.
You know, everyone that she's competing with is probably not making it themselves and buying cheaper ingredients or concentrates of the real fruits that they use. So they probably can't compete on the price level. So it's the quality that's getting into there and the knowledge that they clearly have of the beer and the bar industry through their background at the Euston Tap and at 5 Points.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the way then they've turned to breweries to collaborate with, because they want some friends.
Exactly, yeah. If it's awkward hanging out with your colleagues, then go
elsewhere. And that really
mates.
Has cemented them within the beer industry. Everyone knows them. All the craft beer bars, it seems to be the soda stock of choice in craft beer bars, and they've experimented with more breweries than anyone else to produce some really exciting different beers, low ABV beers or soft drinks. So I think that is a really amazing thing, and it sort of highlights to you how lucky that it is to be in the beer industry where it is collaborative and very friendly, because not every industry can be like that. You know, you can know people that work in the soda industry and you can like them on a personal level, but you can't really interact with them as much.
Yeah. I mean, you look at where we are, where two breweries have come together to launch something together. to what should be competitors. You know, there's not many industries where that's possible because you don't have 10 taps with 10 different beers on. So yeah, I mean, it was a great business opportunity, business ploy for them. But it also means that they produced, you know, I love the shandy that they do with Pressure Drop. And I think, you know, the fact that Dry January this year has been so successful as a campaign proves that people want lower alcohol stuff. But equally, looking at statistics that I did when I was writing a story about it, soft drink sales go down in January as well.
Yeah, I suppose people just go out less.
Yeah. But if you can get them back in with quality stuff, then that's the only way that you can really, certainly as a pub, arrest that decline, is to get something else for you to get excited about. And it's also it's a 12-month solution. It's not a 1-month solution. If you're able to give them a 0% or a 1% or a 2% alcoholic beverage, that will work for you 12 months of the year. And that's the only way that we're going to sort of deal with the fact that the government doesn't really want us drinking for some reason.
Yeah, and I mean, for them, it's a great time to get into it because stats show that millennials, I'm doing the inverted commas again, we do it so much, but are either drinking a lot less or not drinking at all. So there may be, in 10 years' time, this huge swing where people really aren't going towards beer or wine or gin, which is obviously very popular at the moment, and they're looking for alternatives.
Yeah.
And, you know, it could be Square Root, it could be any of the other soft drink companies out there. But I think from what Robyn was saying and from tasting all their drinks, they are at the forefront of it. They're making such a good quality product.
Yeah. It's the best lemonade I've ever tasted.
Yeah, their lemonade's amazing.
Yeah. And so I think it's really interesting that, you know, there's definitely an opportunity there for Square Root. It's going to be moderated by how effective people brewing with concentrate and brewing under contract can tap into what they've actually produced, this artisan soda industry, which would be my concern. As if I worked in marketing for them, I'd be like, well, we need to make sure that our message gets out, we make it ourselves, that's the quality stuff. And I think that's also true in the beer industry, where there's now a lot of breweries who brew under contract or
don't brew at all,
managing to corner a market significantly easier than others. And I think that increasingly will become a huge... Whenever I talk about issues like this, you look to Belgium because they're even ahead of America in terms of the business side of it. And you look at Belgium and they hate contract brewers because...
Oh, completely. Or even any big brand, any buyout, they hate InBev.
Yeah.
And everyone knows about it, whereas I think unless you are really into beer and you know who InBev are, but Joe Blogs, they don't even know who the biggest brewery in the world is.
No.
But Belgium's really, really dislike it.
Yeah.
And
they've had all their big brands decimated. Like Chimay and Duvel are probably the only survivors of that, 20, 30 years ago, where there were just endless buyouts, endless closures, and they know what happens if an industry is bought into and basically shut down.
Yeah, they crippled their industry.
Yeah. And I think that we need to be wary of that in the UK in the beer industry. All industries need to be wary of that. And I think that in soda, even if the big guys don't come in, because, I mean, let's be honest, Coca-Cola is a brand that is never going to worry about Square Root. But people who take influence from Coca-Cola, people making contract brewed, slightly better, maybe sustainably brewed or whatever it is, will be a threat to Square Root. But their product is just on another level.
It was interesting what Robyn said, that she doesn't even think they'll be on the radar of brands like Coca-Cola yet, because it is such a small part of the market. Like, we talk about how the craft beer industry in the UK is in its infancy, but soda is really in its infancy. You know, they're one of the founders and they're maybe 5 years old.
I mean, even the government doesn't deem them worthy of sugar tax yet.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they are corporation tax, but none, they're not seen as a producer of sugary drinks by the government. That's how small this industry is now.
And there's more and more cropping up, so it will be really interesting to sort of see the path it takes, if it follows a similar trajectory to beer, if there'll be 300 soda producers in London in the next...
That would be awesome, but maybe not so awesome for Robyn. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you've got any thoughts, or if you know of any awesome soda companies, let us know. You can get us at Beer Channel, or get us at Beer Merchants, who are our sponsor. Otherwise, we've got an episode coming in February. We won't say which it is because we haven't decided which, but we do have content coming monthly now. Christmas will not get in the way. So all the best, guys, and as always, try to get out of the bubble.